In Ecuador, presidential candidate Luisa Gonzalez of the Citizens' Revolution Movement reiterated that she will contest the result of the elections that gave the victory to President Daniel Noboa. China's foreign ministry criticized the United States' recent tariff hikes, calling the 245% rate extortionate and arguing that such measures no longer make economic sense. And in Palestine, dozens of people were killed in a massacre committed by Israeli occupation forces, shelling displaced people's tents. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos. I'm from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. We now begin with the information. In Ecuador, presidential candidate Luisa Gonzalez of the Citizens' Revolution Movement reiterated that she will contest the result of the elections that gave the victory to President Daniel Noboa. In a video that was published on a Wednesday night in her social networks, she thanked those who supported her with their vote, adding that what happened in the second round of elections was a serious attack against the legal and constitutional order of the country. Gonzalez accused Noboa of the use of public resources, of the delivery of bonuses without technical support, and also made reference to some of the irregularities, such as multiple versions of minutes that were modified by the National Electoral Council itself, minutes without signatures, and sums that did not coincide with the number of voters. In the sense, she warned that all these findings would be challenged and contested before the competent authorities.
Quiero comunicar al país y al mundo entero.
I want to communicate to the country and to the whole world that all these very serious findings will be challenged and contested before the competent authorities, which today, unfortunately, are under the control of those who govern, as well as of all the legal institutions that assist us. This in order to prevent Ecuador from becoming a country without peace, without freedom, without democracy, in the midst of a persecution against those of us who have had the courage to raise our voices and who today have more than 1 million votes scandalously snatched in an unfair, unequal election never seen in our history.
And in this way, the Ecuadorian presidential candidate Luisa Gonzalez denounced before all organizations the electoral fraud committed by Daniel Noboa.
For this cause, for this struggle that impels me to think of the most needy, of the poorest, is that I see myself in the obligation to denounce the serious attack that our country suffers, trampled in its legal and constitutional order. This campaign, plagued with irregularities, began with the fact that Mr. Noboa campaigned without a license, continued with the seizure of electoral institutions that illegally allowed the indiscriminate use of public resources for an open campaign by the government in office. Millionaire bonds were also delivered without technical analysis as a populist strategy to buy votes, which today puts dollarization at risk, changes of electoral precincts, and last-minute states of exception. In short, we can point out an endless number of infractions committed by those who today have taken power under the fictitious shadow of democracy.
And we stay on topic as national and international organizations and movements have also denounced an electoral fraud in Ecuador and demanded the authorities of the National Electoral Council a recount of the votes of the 2025 presidential elections. They also alleged that Noboa should not assume the presidency because he disrespected more than 5 Ecuadorian laws. Gabriela Mena brings us more details.
In Ecuador,
political organizations, social movements, and legal groups have denounced electoral fraud, warning about irregularities in the process that gave Noboa the victory. They emphasize that there was a manipulation of minutes and irregular prohibitions to disrespect the will of the Ecuadorian people.
In addition, on this occasion, there was no opportunity for the citizens to photograph the votes, and this, of course, is the result of the distrust that the Ecuadorian people have in their president of the republic. We are living before the state of caprice, and this cannot be given in the legal system.
punto en que coinciden varios analistas y organizaciones
Point on which several analysts and political organizations agree. From the beginning and after the conclusion of the elections in Ecuador, the citizen revolution rejected the electoral results and announced fraud, affirming that they did not remain with their arms crossed. But what are the ways that must be complied with to denounce electoral fraud? First, a political actor must present a denunciation before the National Electoral Council. This document must be supported by arguments, photographs, testimonies, and reports that validate the irregularities, and in a period of up to 1 year the ruling can be announced. For the analyst Ramiro Rivadeneira, this would not allow Noboa to be sworn in this May 24th.
sea posesionado este 24 de mayo.
Me queda claro que se trata de un fraude.
It is clear to me that we are dealing with a much more complex fraud than what could exist with respect to the accounting of certain votes. It is not only a question of numbers, it is not only a question of accounts. Behind this there is an accumulation, a lot of edges that have to be analyzed, and from there it is important to open the minutes.
Tienen que analizar y desde ahí es importante abrir las actas.
El Tribunal Contencioso Electoral, previo a hacer la proclamación.
The contentious electoral tribunal, prior to making the proclamation of the official results, must resolve the illegalities committed by Noboa, starting with the lack of request for a license to the National Assembly to initiate the campaign period. He did not entrust the presidency to Veronica Abad, the use of state funds for campaigning, and the declaration of a state of exception just hours before the beginning of the election day.
However, what the court has done to somehow say that it is doing its job is to channel several of these complaints into one. Of these 5, there is still no definitive resolution to tell us what has happened.
Es necesario mencionar que a este cúmulo de ilegalidades.
It is necessary to mention that, to this accumulation of illegalities, it has added the implementation of a law by the National Electoral Council and at the same time denied the possibility to Ecuadorians to exercise their right to vote from abroad, in countries such as Venezuela, where Luisa Gonzalez had a high number of supporters.
Todas estas cosas hacen un contexto de que los resultados.
All these things make a context in which the final results are bulky. They do not make any statistical sense. In all this context, it seems to me that what is really responsible is that people do question how this type of issues could have occurred.
Expertos cuestionan si las autoridades.
Experts question whether the authorities will act legitimately without tipping the balance in favor of Noboa and not declaring fraud. And the fact is that unions denounce that Noboa has the powers of the state monopolized.
Gabriela Mena, teleSUR Ecuador.
Now we have a short break coming up, but first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. We continue with more information. In Argentina, security forces repressed with tear gas another demonstration of rhetoric in front of the Congress in Buenos Aires, leaving more than 100 injured. The protest, organized weekly to demand pension increases and a new pension formula, faced an operation that included the federal police, the gendarmerie, and prefecture, who restricted traffic and threw chemicals against demonstrators, including minors. Among those affected were a 13-year-old girl, a 16-year-old teenager as well, and Deputy Alejandro Vilca, who was hospitalized. The mobilization meant to reiterate the demand for pensions to recover the lost purchasing power after the government vetoed an increase in the year 2024. Organizations such as UTEP warned that they will continue the protest until they get answers.
Well, the Monetary Fund sets conditions that imply destroying more than what is already destroyed, what they have been stealing for decades, and what little there is of the little that this government torturer of the population is leaving us. They are asking for even less, and not only for us, but for future generations, that no one will be able to retire, And the little they retire will be a thing of hunger worse than what we are suffering now.
And we go now to Bolivia as the national government announced that it is guaranteeing food supplies despite the floods caused by the rainy seasons and the boycott imposed by the Legislative Assembly with the non-approval of international credits that could alleviate the shortage of U.S. dollars. Our correspondent Freddy Morales with the details.
The government continues to add up figures on the damage caused by the rainy season, most of which affects food crops.
The 9 departments are affected. We have 136 municipalities that have been affected. For 1,005 communities, 221,000 affected producers, 330,869 acres affected, and 678,975 heads of cattle that have been affected. We are talking about 3.5% of the total production that we have in our country.
And it was announced that this time natural phenomena will not significantly affect both planting and food production in the country.
We want to inform the Bolivian people that food security is guaranteed. We are not going to have food shortages, as some politicians are saying. We are already at 47% of the harvest at this moment. We are making an evaluation in the field with the technicians. More than 40 technicians have been mobilized to have exact data of the affectation of the crops.
It was even announced the possibility of re-establishing food exports, which were suspended more than 4 months ago to avoid internal price increases and smuggling of domestic production to neighboring countries.
Obviously, there is the possibility that we can open up exports. We have no problem that if there is enough production, we will open exports. We agree with the data that there is a good soybean production. Therefore, it is good news.
However, at the same time, it was warned that the internal economic situation, practically in crisis, could be alleviated if the political opposition that controls the Legislative Assembly did not boycott the economic administration, for example, by freezing international credits.
Today we import 90% of the internal consumption. We import diesel. We can only produce 10%. There you have the problem. How can there not be shortages if there are no dollars to buy? Dollars that are frozen in the assembly. As our sister mayoress mentioned, she knows and all the mayors know that there is a serious problem in the assembly of not approving the credits. Therefore, dollars are not coming in.
The political opposition, which controls the legislature, keeps frozen more than $1 billion in international credits that could alleviate the shortage of that currency. The government refuses to approve them because of the political calculation that if the government of President Luis Arce does badly, its candidates will be able to take more political advantage during his electoral campaign and in the national elections next August.
Freddy Morales, teleSUR, Bolivia.
Now we change topics. A spokesperson for China's foreign ministry criticized the United States' recent tariff hikes on Chinese imports, describing the 245% rate as an extortion and arguing that such measures no longer make economic sense. The comments came after the White House announced a series of escalating tariffs, including a new executive order that increased duties on Chinese imports to 125% in response to China's own 84% tariffs on U.S. goods. The Chinese spokesperson stated that these increases have become a numbers game with little real economic impact, serving mainly to highlight how the U.S. uses tariffs as a tool for political pressure. The spokesperson also emphasized that China does not seek a trade war, but is prepared to respond, warning that further U.S. escalation would be met with resolute countermeasures. And in the United States, 3 people were killed on Wednesday morning in a boating collision during the second day of the Major League Fishing Tackle Warehouse Invitational on Lewis Smith Lake in Alabama. A bass fishing boat struck a center console vessel near Miller Flats, north of Birmingham, leaving 1 man fatally injured while 2 were thrown overboard and then drowned. The Alabama Law Enforcement Agency is investigating the crash, and in response to this tragedy, the Major League Fishing canceled the tournament's final day, which had a top prize of $115,000. Katie Fennell, the MFLF's executive vice president, expressed her condolences to the families and also called the incident heartbreaking. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverages, and much more. Follow the page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. We go now to the Middle East and Palestine. Dozens of people were killed in a massacre committed by Israeli occupation forces shelling displaced people's tents. Israel committed a new massacre by shelling the tents of displaced people in Al-Mawasi area west of Han Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip. According to the Gaza Civil Defense, more than 15 bodies were recovered, most of them from children. In addition, dozens of people were wounded and many of the bodies of martyrs were burned. It is important to note that Israel continues to commit massacres against civilians in the Gaza Strip, shelling inhabited buildings, displaced people's tents, and hospitals in the midst of a constant siege that causes a daily increase in the number of martyrs and wounded. And also in this context, Palestine warned that the entry of Prime Minister of the Israeli Zionist regime, Benjamin Netanyahu, into the northern Gaza Strip represents an extension of the genocidal crimes and forced displacement against the Gazan people. The Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs stressed that the Zionist premier's incursion constitutes an attempt to circumvent the demands for an immediate halt to the aggression and the implementation of the precautionary measures issued by the International Court of Justice. It should be noted that the constant provocations by Israel are considered a flagrant violation of all international agreements and the Geneva Conventions. The number of Palestinians killed by the Israeli regime since October of 2023 to date has reached 51,000, with 116,343 wounded. And Yemeni forces have succeeded in making their plan to support the Palestinian cause affect world trade, as traffic through Egypt's Suez Canal has reportedly fallen by 50% so far in 2025. This was confirmed by the head of the Suez Canal Authority, Osama Ravi, who stressed that the Yemeni forces' incursions in solidarity with the population of the Gaza Strip have forced many ships of different flags to change their course, forced many ships to divert their trajectory in this sense. For their part, Ansarullah has ratified that as soon as Washington, London, and Tel Aviv stop killing Palestinians in Gaza, the ships would be able to sail in peace along its coasts. And we now move on to other topics. In Kenya, peasant agroecology schools are training their grassroots to collectively correct and prevent violations in an attempt to restore the rights of pheasants and stipulated in the United Nations declarations known as UNDROP. Our correspondent Oscar Epelde has more.
The Nyamamagana School in Kuria aims to put an end to rape once and for all. Peasant agroecology schools in the country are fighting against social injustices.
If the Office of Directorate does not implement Article 4, 6, and 23 of UNDROP, women and girls continue suffering, and we will have more cases of defilements on our school girls.
They use UNDROP as a tool to mount petitions, actions that seek to correct and prevent violations, in this case, sexual violations against adolescent girls. They often get pregnant, drop out of school, and seek indecent wages to eat and survive. The mother of a 13-year-old victim recounts what has been done to her daughter. She claims that the perpetrator sold 2 cows to erase evidence of the rape. She considers as accomplices those who were supposed to protect the victim's rights, her right to justice in the first place.
When the money was sent, the girl was told to stay there. The girl was 4 months pregnant. The girl told her, they have been injected me some medicine, some injections, and in 5 minutes like this, the unborn child came out. So they aborted the child.
We have learned about the channel whereby we report the violation to the chief's office. We also push the human rights groups that help us to file a case and move to the stage of petition, and we end up attaining justice. And this one also ensures that the perpetrators are not, they are scared of doing the same.
Women, they don't have rights to others. That is the statement.
Ella es del clúster de Comasincha.
She is from the Comasinca cluster, also in Curia.
We are going to have a lot of things to do, but most of them we did in our UNROP classes. As you can see, for the communication strategy, we had done it.
Otro de los casos es la...
Another case is the denial of land rights to women.
Denying women land rights. The main article was Article 4, Right of Peasants Women. Title we gave it was End Discrimination Against Women.
My husband died in 2020. When he died, my brother-in-law was living here at home, and he came and sold the land.
Se compró un coche y más cosas.
He bought a car and more things while she relies on daily wages to pay for food and education for 6 children. At the school, they study the details of each plan, the financing, the implementation, the teams in charge of coordinating the collective force that is capable of ending the violations against peasant rights.
La escuela continúa desde Migor y Oscar Repelde para TeleSUR.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.